Manhattan Island. Today, with its towering skyscrapers, it would have looked so different to those early settlers who came to these shores. This story is about a missionary called David Brainerd, who would spread the liberty of the gospel to the native inhabitants of these shores. He would die early, but in a short space of time he would leave a legacy for mission and be an inspiration to generations of Christians. The story of David Brainerd's life would become well known because of two important factors. Brainerd kept a diary of his life, and Jonathan Edwards, a key figure during the First Great Awakening, looked after David Brainerd during his final days of suffering from tuberculosis. Edwards, noting the significance of what Brainerd had done in his short years, published Brainerd's diary, which became well read and an encouragement to believers everywhere. During the early 1700s, the frontiers were still being forged. There were 13 established colonies still under British rule. For the Native American Indians, it was an uncertain time as they faced the influx of settlers.
Settlers want land, and there's a lot of problems over the land transactions because Native people knew nothing about fee simple, about individual ownership of land. Land was given to a tribe by the Creator, and the tribal people used that land. And when certain members weren't using one part of it, another member could use it, but nobody owned the land. So what happens is when, for example, inland people would often come to the coast to do fishing. Of course, there were people living on the coast, so what they had to do was they would pay tribute. The coastal people would allow them to stay there for a couple of weeks and fish. And so the original land transactions here, this is probably what Native people thought they were doing. So you have a lot of problems there. And of course, one of the major problems is disease. European diseases decimated people here. There are some estimates that 90% of the population, Native population in southern New England was killed off by European diseases by 1650. That's a tremendous amount.
By the 17 teens, New England is actually emerging out of a time of prolonged warfare. Not only do you have King Philip's War in 1675, 1676, you also have a series of imperial wars with France and her Indian allies, King William's War, Queen Anne's War. And so by the time you hit the 17 teens, actually things are beginning to stabilize. There is a resumption of immigration, and also you have the emergence of a really robust Atlantic world trade that is going on too. And so Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts are continually being integrated into this wider world of trade.
David Brainerd was born in the colony of Connecticut in 1718 in a town called Haddam on the Connecticut River. He was the sixth of 9 children born to Hezekiah and Dorothy Brainerd.
The best knowledge we have of Brainerd's family background suggests that his grandfather came to the colonies at the age of about 12 as an indentured servant. And then when he reached the age of 21, he was part of a group of men who settled the new town of Haddam. He and his wife had a number of children. One of them, the youngest son, Hezekiah Brainerd, who was David Brainerd's father, became very wealthy, very politically connected. His father served numerous terms in the Connecticut legislature. He was on the governor's council. He was Speaker of the House of Connecticut in several occasions. In addition to his land, there's pretty good evidence that he ran a fairly successful merchant business from his home.
His home life, early on, he was educated by his parents and at home, and children would be regularly taught not just Latin, not just grammar, but the catechism, and they were expected to know the basics of Christian doctrine so that when they heard the minister on Sunday preach, say on the doctrine of justification, he wouldn't have to take time to explain what that was. The families would know what that is because they had been catechized.
Brainerd was part of a New England world that was still very much influenced by the legacy of the Puritans, these forefathers who'd come in the 17th century and whose impact, not only religiously but politically, on the colony was very, very strong.